Welcome back to another video. Today, doing a fuel pump on the Mustang. So, above me we have two 044 pumps. Described all of that old junky fuel system, I believe, in the last video. We're going to ditch both these pumps, one of which is inactive. It's a little bit seized. And we're going to throw a magnafuel 750 with pre and post filter. As of right now, the current setup is a -8 from the fuel cell to the pump, and then -8 all the way to the rail. So we have a pre-filter here, -8 up to the regulator, which is right above the wheel well, and that is -8 to bank 2 fuel rail, and then that fuel rail feeds the bank 1 fuel rail on the driver's side, also -8. So -8 pretty much all the way there, and then -8 to return all the way back to the fuel cell. And there's a couple things here I do not like, I do not agree with on this fuel system. So one, this engine's capable of some decent power, and we're running -8. I feel like personally it's a little bit restrictive, especially for the pump that we're going to be throwing on it. So we're going to do -10 from the fuel cell to the magnafuel, and then -10 all the way up to a splitter. And the reason why I want to run a splitter is because currently, like I said, it is feeding, the pump is feeding the regulator, and then the regulator feeds bank 2 fuel rail, which feeds bank 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do -10 to a splitter. It's going to Y 2 -10s to each rail, so it's going to feed both rails at the same time, and then both rails are going to then feed the regulator, and then the regulator is going to be a -8 back to the tank. So enough talking. I'm just going to go ahead and start installing this stuff, and you can kind of get a visual of what I mean when we're wrapping it up. A lot of these P-clips here, and I don't like the way they're ran. This hose is all sorts of twisted and kinked. I mean, P-clips are okay, man. I'm not knocking the P-clip, I'm just knocking the routing process. Okay? Okay, this is where we have problems. Okay, listen, this right here is where the problems begin. I have no problems with P-clips, but I do have problems with P-clips when they're riveted onto the chassis. Unbelievable. And listen, it's not just one. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every single one of these. Every single one. Riveted. Riveted. Not that that's the end of the world, but golly, that's annoying, I tell you. All right, so we have the old -8 draining. So while it's draining into our special OSHA approved fuel container, we're going to take our fuel pump and we're going to mock it up where we want it. Probably something like this, right? Because then we can take our dash 12 and right there, and that'll keep it kind of away from things. But there's no really other place I thought this thing can go. So I guess we're gonna see if this will work or not. I have this mounted. I did an oopsie and forgot my my thread inserter at work. So I ended up having to just self-tap the bracket in, but that's kind of where it's going to be. Once I tighten up the bolts to the pump body, then this will be rigid. And then what I'll end up doing is I'll probably throw a safety strap around the pump as well. So if, say, where the bracket were to crack or break, it'll have like a rubber insulated strap that it will be able to fall on instead of falling down and rubbing up on stuff. Dash 10 feed line coming off the post filter. And that I have just zip tied for now. And then, like I said, we're going to be running it to a splitter. So that's dash 10 to 2 dash 10 outlets. And that's going to pop us out right in the firewall there. And little spooky stories. So from there, we're just going to run 2 more dash 10 hoses. 1 hose to bank 1 rail and 1 hose to bank 2. So essentially bank 1, bank 2, not in that particular order. So unfortunately I cannot finish mounting the pump permanently or the fuel lines because your boy forgot his thread inserter at work. So we're just gonna mock everything up with zip ties, make sure everything is, copacetic. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to prime the fuel pump with the line off. Like I'm gonna pull the splitter off the line right here. And then I'm just going to, I'm gonna run some fuel in the tank, some pump gas, and then basically prime the pump that way, if you will. But I'm just gonna make sure any debris that's sitting in the pump, in the hose, anything like that is being pumped into a OSHA certified container and disposed of legally and correctly. But anyway, so once we get that done, I'll put the splitter back on. We're gonna run the lines back to the rails and go from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this thing down on the ground. I'm gonna mount the splitter and then start running hoses to the rails. I gotta relocate the fuel regulator, which you'll see here shortly. All right, so I gotta move this fuel regulator first and foremost, and then I'm gonna move the power distribution post there. Don't know where I'm gonna put either just yet, but get those out of there, and then that'll clear some room for the splitter here. And there's a catch can that I'm gonna be putting right here for the catch can hoses. So we'll see how that all lays out, but that's the plan. But the splitter is going to split, like I said, one going to bank 2 and then the other one going to the back of bank 1 rail, because as of right now it's just regulator, bank 2 rail, bank 2 rail, bank 1. I mean, it works, but I like regulator being on the return side. Pulled the 8AN to 8 ORB fitting off the rail and installed a -10. The regulator pulled out, the distribution block. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to shorten some of these power cables, and I'm going to run it right behind the trans dipstick, and then I'm going to get a rubber cap for the post. Not right behind the stick, but, you know, kind of down a little bit right here. That way you could still get some jumper cables on it if need be. I took off the -10 to -8 reducer, and I put on this -10 to -12 adapter. And then I think we'll be okay with this hole being this size, but if not, I'll just have to make this hole a little bit bigger. Feed the -12 hose in. I did have to order a -1290 fitting for the hose because this hose only has straights. So we're gonna end up having to cut and section this thing to make it shorter anyway. And when we do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw the 90-degree fitting, much like this one, just in -12. So, and then that'll run up to the cell, and obviously that'll be our feed to the pump. I do think I'm gonna end up just throwing it right here. It just fits the best. Got one hose already made up, -8, that'll run to the left side of the regulator, and then I'm gonna mock up another hose and then cut and fit and put another hose on the other side. So we're gonna have bank 2 going here, bank 1 to here, and then this is gonna be our return. And our return is down there somewheres. I did mock up the catch can. Catch can's gonna fit nicely right in here. I might have to take some tubes to space from the flange of the catch can to the firewall. And then, as you can see, there's a space. And then I might just take some of this cowl here and just cut a notch out. I won't take the whole thing off, but I might cut it back to the seam and then just notch this part out. And then that'll allow the catch can to sit closer to the firewall. The catch can will fit perfect like this. And then our regulator is gonna go right here, like that. So it'll all work out. Regulator, feed, catch can, power post. Pre-filter, magnafuel 750, post filter, -10. I still, I gotta grab my thread serter from work yet, but just threw the P-clips up for time being, kind of get everything mocked up. -8 return, got the Y tucked right there. I'm going to be pulling it away from the frame a little bit so it's not vibrating on that. And then I'm going to try to mount that return hose a little bit so it's not resting up against the frame as well. And the fuel regulator's up there. And like I said, I'm going to be throwing in like a drive shaft safety strap probably up here and back here. That way if the drive shaft breaks, it's not tearing up stuff, fuel lines particularly. Bank 2 feed -10, bank 1 -10, bank 1 return -8, bank 1 return -8, returns to the regulator, both banks, and then -8 all the way back to the tank. Oh yeah. So, fast forward a couple days here. We got our PTFE -12 fittings for the fuel cell, for the fuel feed for the pump. We're going to ditch We're gonna ditch the straight ends, cut a section out of this, and we're just gonna be putting these 90-degree fittings in. Shit. I kind of thought this was gonna be a problem. Feed that down in there, and I'm gonna have to waller out the hole right there. A little bit too tight for this big boy fitting here. Grabbed our old dinger grinder downer 5000 and went from underneath here. Wallered this out here, and now a little bit of a tight fit, but it fits nonetheless. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, as I always say. Now we're just gonna go from underneath and finish lining up the hose here. We got it hooked up to the pump. Oh my goodness, we need light. All right, now we got some light. Essentially, I'm gonna just run this up right there. That's where we put our fitting, wallered out that hole right there. I'm gonna run this like that. I'm gonna cut this out here. It's all bent to shit anyway. So I'll probably just cut it right here. Section this out. And then I'm gonna run the hose up to that. And then that should be it. And then it's all a matter of, I'm gonna clean up this power wire here. And then I'm gonna run a ground strap there, and that's pretty much everything. I will end up pulling the feed hoses off the rails, and I'm gonna be dumping them into like a 5-gallon pail, and we're gonna prime the system, run the pump, flush everything out of the lines, because we used the I don't know what I did with it. Either way, we used the hose cutter 5000, and if you watch some of the previous videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So when that happens, a lot of debris gets inside those hoses, and that's no good, especially because both the pre-filter and the post-filter are at the pump. So that means everything along this line here goes all the way to the rails, feeds directly to the injectors. And any material, any debris inside those lines can go directly into those injectors. And with a lot of that material being rubber, no good, dude, no bueno. So best just to flush them out with some fuel. And this pump's gonna pump out it's gonna be pumping out some juice. Let's be real. So that should be enough to flush those lines pretty good. I was thinking about throwing like some just a fuel filter at the rail. Sorry, not at the rail, at the splitter. But, you know, because I have this one here. I was thinking about taking this guy here and then running it right here before the splitter. But fuck it. Whatever, dude. It should be plenty fine. Call it that. It is what it is. Once I get all these lines cleaned out, I shouldn't have to worry about it at all. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and mock up this stuff, do some cutting right there, and get this hose finished up. I found the hose cutter 5000. It was in the last place I left it. Imagine that. Current scrap price is $200 a ton, so we're gonna keep this. All right, just like that. Ideally, I would like this to be up a little farther on the collar, but we're bottomed out on the inner lip with the tube. And I feel like there's enough meat there. So when we pop this puppy up, it's gonna bite. It's gonna bite pretty good. So at this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw in the other 90. Okay, so I wasn't recording the process of lengthening the hose, but hey, deal with it. I ended up coming from the bottom, hooking this up to the tank, and then I kind of just swiveled it around and found this is the length I wanted. Put some tape on the son of a bitch and cut it off right there. I like throwing tape on these things. That way the metal strands and the nylon and all that doesn't fray out on you. It's just, I just like using masking tape because it's paper. And since this is PTFE, we're gonna leave the paper on like this until we throw on our female end like this. We're gonna bring it back just like that. And then we've got this little aluminum collar here. So we pull our tape back. Pretty simple stuff here. PTFE is gonna be a little bit different than normal stuff. So we got that inner plastic tube. I'm gonna call it plastic because I don't know what material it's made out of. And then what I do is I take a little flathead and I just kind of pry the strands away from the tube. And what's gonna happen is this is gonna sit, the tube is gonna go inside of the fitting, and then the strands, the steel strands and the nylon is gonna rest up against the outside here. So basically this collar goes in between the plastic tube and the metal strands. And then we can slide this puppy up and then thread our fitting on. You'll see how that goes. Thought I lost the 90. It was on the pump the whole time. So, pull our fitting up a little bit, just like that. Then we're going to take this bad boy there. And we're going to fit it inside. Now, when you push this in, what's going to happen is it's going to expand that tube inside on the inner ribs of the collar. It's going to kind of mesh into those inner ribs, create a good bite, right? All right, so we got it pushed in pretty darn good. Make sure it's all the way in. And then we can just start threading this bad boy on. And then once it gets tight, that's when you're gonna throw this. Well, I like to throw these in a vise. Wrap it in tape or whatever, throw it in a vise, and then use your crescent wrench and snug up the end. Shit, fire. Just like that, we got ourselves a -12 feed line for our pump. We're gonna hook this up to the tank, hook it up to the pump, and get the show on the road. Something like that. Something like that. In hindsight, I probably could have made this a little bit shorter of a hose, because now I'm gonna have to tighten the fitting up like this and like that. I just don't like it dipping down, right, like this, because then you have gravity feeding it down and it's got to fight its way back up, versus if it's just kind of like, you know, like that in a way, then it's got a little bit and then it can just straight shoot over. I'm gonna mess around with that. We'll get it right. I don't think it's gonna affect much, because I mean, it's gravity fed and that's a lot of fuel, and I don't know. I'm making myself feel better now, but I think it's gonna work out just fine. I've definitely worked with worse. I've done some weirder things than that and had it work with a fuel cell. But that's it, man. That is it. That is it. So the rest of this stuff is just kind of cleaning the lines out, and we'll do that and start her up. Okay, I hope I'm not gonna regret this, but windshield wiper container fits perfect over that, but I only had one, so we're gonna do a little experiment. We're gonna do that on this, and then we're gonna do a bucket over there on that one, and we're just gonna see what happens. We're just gonna pulse the pump. All right, so we got something. All right, we got the lines hooked up to the rails. Let's see if she'll fire. Hell yeah, brother! That's awesome. That is very, very cool. So I'm just gonna go through, check for leaks, and then go from there. It doesn't like cold start, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I have my heat off in the shop, and it's probably all of 30 degrees out here. But, dude, it works. No leaks. First try. Mint. So I think that's gonna wrap up this one. Pretty cool. I got a little excited there going into detail about the dash 12 stuff, but you know, whatever, deal with it. Yeah, next video we're gonna be getting this thing over to Wisco Speed for a camp install, so stay tuned for that. I might try to putt around in this thing after I do the alignment before then, hopefully, and go from there. But stay tuned, man. I'm trying to pump out videos, but it's hard with you know, working a full-time job and, you know, doing the dad thing. Aside from that, bear with me. I have more videos coming out soon. The season's right around the corner. I can smell it. I can smell the race gas. We're gonna actually next month, I believe, later next month or early in May, we're gonna be going into our first event with this car. So hopefully we can get some testing and tuning on the street before then, and keep this thing together and keep her straight. So as always, appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. You know, that's it.